The interim joint budget subcommittee on justice and judiciary. Meeting materials received by the deadline were posted online earlier this week and made available for downloading. At this time, we'll have the secretary call the roll.
Senator Schickel.
Present.
Senator Webb. Senator Westerfield. Representative Cantrell. Representative Decker. Representative Elliott. Representative Hatton. Representative Nemus, Senator McDaniel, Representative Petrie, Representative Reed, Representative Massey, Co-Chair Carroll.
Here.
Chair Fisher.
Here. Without a quorum, we'll just proceed. This morning we're going to hear from representatives from the AOC and county jails here to provide an update regarding the virtual hearing technology projects in Kentucky courts, for which $14.7 million was appropriated to the AOC in the prior budget. An additional $15 million was provided in the current budget, supporting county jails directly with costs associated with implementing video arraignment technology. So if the presenters would come to the table. Please identify yourselves and welcome.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. Beth Lucas with the Administrative Office of the Courts. Thank you for having us this morning to provide the update on the projects. I'll let my other folks introduce themselves.
Good morning. I am Scott Mattingly with the Administrative Office of the Courts. I'm the Technology Officer.
Good morning, all. Jim Daly. I'm the jailer at Campbell County and the current president of the Jailers Association.
Good morning and thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. As all of you all are aware, we received funding, $14.7 million for 5 technology projects in 2022. So what we've done is break those down by project to give the idea of what is going on with each of those projects. $6 million was allocated to expand video arraignment. $4.6 million was allocated to provide the hybrid video conferencing. To date, we've expended $471,538 and obligated another $115,000. I think some of the talking points here that we wanted to make sure we communicated was that we had planned and are planning to purchase for 463 courtrooms and 72 jails, less the pilots that have been up and running. This includes hardware, licenses, deployment and installation, as well as infrastructure updates. So the hardware, and Scott will talk about this in a minute, but our Zoom is our chosen platform. So we're looking at Zoom room systems. We'll make adjustments to our JAVS courtroom equipment, and then there's annual maintenance associated with that as well.
Can I interrupt you
Yes,
real
sir.
quickly? Please explain the difference between expanding video arraignments and the hybrid video conferencing.
And that's a good point. I actually think that's much harder for us to do. We've more combined those two in efforts because we're moving with a platform approach for the video conferencing and video arraignment that are combined. So we have a single platform that will allow for both remote participants and for arraignment.
Okay, thank you.
The licenses include Zoom Room and Zoom business user licenses. The deployment, we're actually in the middle of interviewing for a project management to help us with the deployment of an implementation of this entire rollout, which we anticipate starting early next year. And then infrastructure, there are some updates that will need to be made and some allowances for when the jail selects the solution, how it interfaces with our hybrid video arraignment and video conferencing platforms. Any questions before we move on?
When you say early next year, you're going to roll 463 courtrooms and 72 jails all at once? Is that what the
The
plan is?
the plan will be to do that by county. Typically, we pilot first, which Scott will talk about in a minute, and we're in the middle of piloting the solution, both in the courtrooms and with our esteemed colleague in Campbell County in the jail. So we are continuing to work on and fine tune the selection of the solution, and then how we will implement that will be a county by county basis.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And I did want to mention a little and just kind of speak to the project in general, with where we were and where we're going to. So historically, we have had video arraignment for the courts, and we've had that for several years. But that system was very specific to each court. It was a point-to-point solution. So when we went to build one out, we would put something in a jail, we would put something in a courtroom, and then we would have a dedicated line between those. It's very inflexible. It was complicated. It was expensive, but it allowed that to happen. So, we're looking now at this as kind of generations for where we have versions of solutions that we had. And that was kind of the first gen for us, which was a point-to-point, just a dedicated solution for this. Big problems, though, to add it to another county was very costly. It was also, there's a big ownership issue. A lot of things were involved. The second gen, which really came out of the pandemic, which is when all of a sudden we needed to take on remote participants as well. So we had a system that was designed to take video from one point to another, and now we're trying to take anything on the internet in. So with that, we introduced a laptop interface that let judges use their own computers to be able to tie into sometimes, not always, and I'll get to that's part of the problem with Gen 2, to the local system in the courtrooms to use remote participants and for arraignments. So basically all they did at that point was call a jail or a detention center a remote participant. So you would have to join with your own equipment, computer, laptop, iPhone, something, and then they would go on the judge's computer and do the same. That system was rushed. That generation, which was still what we mostly have today, is very inconsistent. It has problems with scale. It also really doesn't cater to video arraignment. It really is more for remote participants in general. So I think that there are a lot of gaps there to be done, but it does allow for it to happen. It does not handle well for hybrid court proceedings or for recording into the existing court record. And that's a big challenge for us, is getting that remote meeting or the remote arraignment back into our court record and utilizing all of the microphones and cameras that are local to the court. So our third generation, that's what we're working on right now, that's what this is funding, is move to combine video arraignment and remote participants. As I mentioned earlier, it is a platform to do this, and it will add in a dedicated video conferencing interface for us that allows for whatever equipment that we use for it to go directly into our JAVS solution, our recording solutions in the counties, and interface in a very consistent method. So one of the key things that we're doing with this, and I think it really goes to adoption and for the ability to roll this out quickly, we are doing court readiness in those locations to make it to where we have that interface that we can then add in the solutions with a very simple. Right now, when you go into 100 or 300 courtrooms, they're all different. Every piece of equipment in there is different. Every solution's different. The layouts are different. And this is helping us take to a standard. So we've got one solution that we'll be able to put in, and we'll be able to move that in faster. So to speak to kind of the milestones, the first thing we really did was with research and development. And that's finding the right solutions for it, finding what can. We ran into a lot of issues with hardware acquiring. It's just bad timing for us. I think everyone at that time couldn't really get hardware in. And then we also ran into the solution that we need to integrate into this to our software didn't exist. So we've had to work with vendors to actually get them to get the solutions we need, and we have that now. The next thing that we worked with was getting a proof of concept in, and Jim can hopefully say that that's been a success for us. So we've got the ability to take that hardware that we had and get it actually put in a location, and that's very helpful, and that's good. And then kind of the rest of where we're going with this was with court readiness. So that is taking those individual systems and basically distilling them down to an interface that we're going to be able to take common platforms and plug into without having to go into each one and figure out where it's everywhere and where it goes. It'll be more of a plug and play. So we have now put 305 sites with the video conferencing interface installed. So that gives us the ability to start plugging that in. Now, testament to that, we now have 18 sites live. Those came up relatively quickly within a 2-month time frame that we were able to take the equipment, plug it into the interface, and kind of roll with it. And the rest of the schedule, it's really now wash and repeat. So it's getting the equipment into the counties. It's going to be a scheduling nightmare. It always is. And then it is working a lot with the jail side of the house, the detention centers and the jails, to make sure that we have compatibility with any system that they deploy, and we can make that work. I think that's a big question mark for us until we have an exact solution to build the compatibility out with. That's a big wild card for us.
Can I interject here
Please.
for a second? Now, is this looks like a solution that's just for Kentucky? Have you looked at other states? Are other states doing their own thing, or are they using the same vendors, same hardware, different hardware?
We've looked at several different, and it's really all over the board. Whenever we're comparing our courts to others, for one, we're a unified court system instead of a county or a single location, and that does scale things different. So again, we're looking for something that worked in 120 counties in every single courtroom, while a lot of those they're very special built. So we kind of had to roll those out. We were looking more at locations that we're doing at this level. One of the counties or states that we looked at was Pennsylvania, that does have a pretty tight court and jail corrections integration. And that is also with the Zoom solution, very similar to what we're doing. They have less integration on the existing video, and they're using more cloud recording. We have to keep our recording local to the courts at this point. So yes, we have looked at several. Zoom has become a very common platform for this, and the room approach makes sense, but for us, it's that integration into the local rooms that are into the local courtrooms that made it challenging.
Now, what would the hybrid video look like? Would it be used for trials? Would it be used for like motion hearings, that sort of thing? Or would it also be used for attorney-client conferences? Because the confidentiality issues involved in that are different than just having it for a full-blown public trial. Are you looking at the confidentiality aspects of it?
Absolutely. With every court proceeding, there are different requirements. So part of that is the confidentiality of when the attorney speaks with the client. And Zoom allows for breakout rooms that have the ability to keep that particular conversation confidential, and those would not be recorded.
Right. All right. Jim, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I would just add that, at least from Jim Daly's perspective, I think this is extremely exciting. From the jail's perspective, we're dealing with 72 different personalities, 72 different facilities. So it's a job. Ms. Renee and I are looking at a couple of different vendors, and we're working to get systems that will integrate with the court system, hopefully flawlessly, but also that will do, we have a multitude of hearings that we do. Great example, during the pandemic, I was doing hearings for Pendleton County, Robertson County, Nicholas County, people across the state. So it's a great savings if we can do it and do it correctly, not to have to transport people from Campbell County to Paducah for a 15-minute hearing. And that some of my brethren don't like the idea of spending their time and money. My perspective, my perspective alone at this point in time, because I have to work this program and sell it for the jailers completely, is that it's fiscal court money. So it's a savings across the board, whether I'm doing the transport or whether the sheriff's doing the transport. But this entire program, and we've been working. He came down and gave us the spiel for the jailers, and I'm the old goat, so I heard right. And then I have to go to somebody afterwards and have it all explained to me again, so I know what they're saying. But it's extremely exciting. We also want a program that will do other things inside of the jail. So that's part of the issue for us, is finding a system that will integrate completely with the court system and do some of the other things inside of a jail that we need to have done. So it's, again, I guess from my perspective, we're working with Jason. If you look at the picture that's up there now, that's my jail. That's Judge Blau. And of course, he is a diehard computer person and loves this stuff. But it's working great for us. We just need to find the way to expand it completely and to make it work with the courts completely. And I think it will be a substantial savings across the state for the court systems and for the fiscal courts.
Senator Carroll.
The future of this technology as far as trials, and I know you could get into some constitutional issues with remote testimony. Do you all envision a day that maybe that is allowed? And I know that might require a constitutional amendment, but as the technology advances, I maybe see the need for that in the future.
I think that is certainly something that is coming down the road. I think as the technology changes, so too we will change. I think that in speaking yesterday with some of the district judges, I think that the evolution of technology is so fast that by the time we pick this solution and implement it, it'll be time to do another. So I think as the technology changes and allows for different things, I think certainly looking at how we do what we do will be something that happens as well.
Now on this timeline again, real quickly, looks like you've spent about $500,000 and have obligations of $115,000, but we're talking about almost an $11 million project. How realistic is it that you're going to get this done, let's say in the first quarter of next year?
So if you'll look at the slide above, I think we'll begin the rollout in 2023. I don't think we'll complete it until 2025. So it takes us a couple of years to get to every single county in the state. We've done this repeatedly with other technology solutions, so we have a pretty good understanding of what it's going to take to roll it out statewide.
Okay. All right.
And I think some of the money that we've been allocated will be reserved to make sure that we can interface with the jail solution, whatever is selected. So that'll be a big piece of this as well.
And kind of what we have on the screen here on the right-hand side, you see this is what's in the courtroom. It's very small, it's very simple, and that's really the interface that would go on the bench. On the left-hand side, that is what we're affectionately calling the jail cart. That is more of a solution that would belong in the jail. That's everything together. So the courtroom itself holds the rest of that. We already have a TV for display. You have video cameras. You have mics already involved. This is putting that whole system into a portable unit that can be used for it. But you can see the touchscreen very much the same. So the interface and the idea set behind it is. Now this was an approach that we were able to use in Campbell County, and this was with us providing the jail cart idea. I think as they provide their own solution, the issue with this is that is a Zoom solution. So if they're doing the other services that they want to do through Zoom, this will work very well. If they need to do those systems through a scheduling software or something that handles that a little bit better for them, then this may not be the right solution, and they'll need to interface with ours instead of having basically our solution. So those two are very equal. One's just in a portable for the jail. The other is set up for the courtroom and designed to interface with our systems.
And have you all received input from the judges and the prosecutors and defense counsel about how this works and how it's implemented?
I think that in the pilots, there's obviously been interaction with those justice partners. We're relying heavily on the judges to guide and direct us in that regard. But I know that in the pilots, there have been those folks that have been engaged in that process.
So how many pilots are there? Campbell County?
18. We have 18
18.
courtrooms.
Okay.
And actually, I think we have 19 courtrooms as of today. So sorry, we did finish one since when we prepared the materials. But and I would say from a feedback perspective, what we've received from it has been, well, I think in any pilot and proof of concept, we got things that we missed. We've got things that are better. Current, I think we have really good feedback. But there is some confusion because we still have that second generation, which was kind of all over the board. So there's a lot of people who feel that they're interacting with this solution when they're really not. It may look the same because the judge could use Zoom. They can do the same meeting on it. We can even have it facilitated to where it's going to be very similar to this, but it's not this solution. So some of the feedback that we receive or information, it is confusing because it's coming not from those pilot sites. But as we're getting these out, I mean, I'm not aware of any major hurdles that we have at this point from what we're hearing from them.
And I think that we live in a hybrid world where we're supporting, the second generation solution while we're transitioning to the third generation solution. So it's something we do every day, but it is a transition and helping people understand, well, you're still here, but we're all going to be here at some point.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you reaching out to us. I think you need to reach out to them as well to explain the progress you're making in this. So, any other questions? Senator McDaniel.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you walk me through those icons that the judge has in front of him there?
Sure.
I think it looks like a meet now, a presentation, a phone. And I just can't read the other two. My eye doctor would be disappointed.
So there's a join, and and the screens have changed slightly from it, but the concepts are still the same. But basically, this is to think of it's a video phone is kind of the way that it's thought of. So you could make a call directly to a location. For example, in the list it shows Campbell County Detention Center Room 1. If you were to click on that and say dial, it will ring it like a phone. So it's that simple, just point to, in to be able to do that. But the key to this is setting up more as meetings. So you say no one's invited, meet now. I can either create a ad hoc meeting on the device or you schedule the room in just as a resource. So when we set these, any of the proceedings up, you invite either the detention center or the courtroom or wherever as the room. It shows up on here, you hit join. At that point, it adds it into the record and it goes. So it's more of a one-click join to it because it will show that the meeting is there. So that meeting list button, that's just showing you those that are available that day.
And who sets that up?
So that's going to be, at our point, done through the facilitators for the most part. The judge themselves can do it. That's, again, that middle today. Did you want to speak to the...
I think that we have set in motion a program for judicial support specialists to be trained in remote court proceedings. This is one of the things that they can facilitate. Some of the judges prefer to facilitate themselves, so we want a solution that allows for both. So we think this does that.
But they'll handle all the scheduling, the meeting rooms and stuff, and then the jails will be responsible to just like have inmate X, Y, or Z available at that room at that time kind of gig.
Correct.
Okay. And so ultimately, what I'm hearing is you guys are going to use like a Zoom Enterprise solution.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And do they offer some kind of advanced level of technical support?
Yes.
Because we're not going to be spending an insignificant amount of money, right? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Carroll.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. So will this create opportunities for AOC to for quality control to monitor certain interactions as they're taking place? Is there a mechanism to do that? Would it be proper for that to happen?
The video record is currently the official record of the court, so those video, they exist already.
But as far as real-time monitoring?
So we do have the ability to do monitoring as far as quality and what is being done, but the content, to look inside of the content, we do not do that remotely, and we do not have that ability. The content would only be done from the current same system that they have today, that on-site personnel can review that and maintain it.
Representative Cantrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for the work that you've done so far on this project. I know it seems like it might not end anytime soon, but I know you're thinking about this in the right way. You have done a really good job of identifying a lot of the stakeholders in this. Obviously, you've brought the judges in because they're going to be operating a lot of the equipment. Obviously, the jails are very important. My question is about other stakeholders and other users of this technology. I'm looking at our public defenders here, our prosecutors. The private bar is also going to be very important for individuals who are represented by private counsel, whether that's criminal or civil. Are there plans for trainings on, this shift to, I think a lot of people want to shift to this technology, but in order for it to be efficient, everyone has to use it and use it well and feel like they are using it within the confines of, their ethical responsibilities to their client, because we've all, been on that Zoom where someone has not been on mute or has said something or done something that they did not intend to. So how can we be sure when the stakes are this high that everyone's going to have the same level of training in place so that doesn't happen?
And I think that's an excellent question. I think training is always a big piece of any implementation. That's certainly something we'll be looking into as well. As you plan the statewide rollout, pilots, you kind of learn, right? You learn from your pilot, and then you develop the implementation plan, which a part of that would include communication as well as training. So I think that's something that we'll be looking at, how to fine-tune that and make sure we've engaged and notified all stakeholders. So that's something we'll be looking at as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now I see there's some added money in there to create a self-representation portal.
Yes, sir.
I suppose that needs to, because people do represent themselves on occasion. Is that the same project completion? Or no, it looks like it's an earlier December.
Yes, sir.
Is that happening? I mean,
It
is
is.
that going to happen?
It
Okay.
is, actually, and that was a great transition. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the self-represented litigant portal was one of the 5 projects. We actually are moving very quickly in this project. We are looking at, there have actually been 10 initial guided interviews created, which means a self-represented litigant can go online and actually complete paperwork to initiate court proceedings.
Are these mostly domestic relations cases, or is it a criminal?
It's mostly the domestic,
Okay.
and we're expanding the pro se divorce forms. So those are on the table as well. The Fayette County Legal Help Center was launched earlier this summer, and on Thursdays they have as many as 10 to 20 people in that facility working with volunteer attorneys to complete paperwork online. So it's hit the ground running. I think some of the things we're looking at is expanding those, and also looking at how do we implement a public workstation for folks to actually sit down and complete those forms. So we'll be launching a public workstation pilot in Fayette County in the very near future, and then working with the circuit court clerks to define and provide additional SRL support services, so that these folks can go and do this work, but be supported as they do it. So we estimate a completion, to your point, Mr. Chairman, in December of 2023.
Senator Schickel has a question.
More of a comment, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
Thank you. Your comments about the workstations and pro se, and the way I interpret that, and I'm not real familiar with that area of the courts, but to make it more user-friendly, which on its surface seems like it would be a good thing. But I'm concerned about, we live in a very litigious society where things that were one time settled over the backyard fence are now protracted court cases. Some people would say unfortunate, clogging up the courts, making minor things major, and really it's not what the courts or what our founders originally set the courts up for. So one of my concerns is you explain some of what you just talked about, is that might be encouraging that, and if it is encouraging it, I don't think that over the long term that's a good thing.
So thank you for your comments. I think that, the intent is to provide the people who are unable to secure, an attorney to be able to do some of the very basic things that they need to be able to do, whether it's, to file for a divorce. So I think that I don't think that it creates an undue burden on the court. I think that these programs are intended to alleviate some of that burden. So we're hopeful that we will see that over time. Again, this has just been an initiated project, basically this summer. We have actually done very, little expansion at this point, although the clerks are clamoring for these guided interviews. We've actually posted them to our website. So those are available to go out and look at those. You can see the legal help forms section down at the bottom there. So the petition for a protective order, expungement of a misdemeanor or traffic offense, motion to waive costs and fees, small claims, et cetera. So I think the long-term vision is to empower folks to do things that they need to be able to do. So that's our goal.
Again, for other states, do they, have you looked at their portals? And
We have looked at other states and portals, and this actually is a free application that allows us to set up these interviews online. We're working extensively with our the Office of General Counsel to make sure that we are abiding by any legal requirements that we need to have included. But this application is used by other states as well. So we are very confident in the use of the technology. I didn't know if you wanted to.
and you're confident in the December 2023 completion?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, moving on here. Talk to us about redaction. And
Redaction.
$1.1 million for redaction software.
Yes.
Please explain.
So Redaction Software, as I'm sure most of you are aware, allows us the ability to hide or redact personal identifiable information. So as you know, most of the documents that reach the court do have some of that information. So being able to protect that certainly is of paramount concern to the court as well as to the public, particularly with all of the security issues, particularly with all the security breaches that we've seen over the course of the last couple years, and the sophistication of the folks who are able now to infiltrate systems. So we want to make sure our data is secure and protected. The use of a software like this will allow us to do that even more. So we are in the beginning stages of this project. We have purchased Redaction Software. We will be launching a proof of concept, and we have hired a redaction administrator, someone to help us oversee and administer the software. And that's kind of where we are with this particular project. With all of these projects, we have a committee of folks that work with us, both stakeholders and AOC personnel. So in trying to outreach to all those people who would be affected we're doing that with a governing body, a committee, if you will. The estimated project completion on this one, as you can see in the timeline, is December of 2024. Still a lot of work to be done here in this particular project, but we are moving fairly quickly in terms of setting up that pilot.
But it just seems to me that this should be a priority. If people are going online and putting their own personal information on there without any security software in there, I would think this should be first, honestly.
It absolutely, and if you think of all these projects are running in parallel. I mean, we have all these projects running in parallel. It is a priority. I think as we step into the electronic record, it becomes more of a priority. So we understand that this is something that needs to be done, and we're working, as quickly as possible to ensure that it's complete in a timely manner before we move to a more electronic record.
Thank you, and I think you have one more slide. It's another $1 million project
Yes, sir.
on a self-service kiosk.
Yes, this is to expand what we refer to as ePay, which is our online service for payment of fines and costs. What this particular project will do is provide a payment option for those who may seek a different payment option. They don't want to go online. They want to go to the courthouse. Our plan is to put kiosks into 12 of the largest courthouses and see how this works. They will be cash-only devices, and then to expand to a retail option, which will allow individuals to go to a retail site like Dollar General, Walmart, et cetera, to make a payment on fines and costs. So this project is probably the quickest moving of the 4 projects. We will be implementing pilots in kiosk machines in Fayette, and then retail options in Nelson, Callaway, and Fleming in November. So that's just a month and a half away. And then in December, we plan to start the statewide rollout with an estimated completion of March 2023.
So this is cash only, and I don't think anybody carries cash anymore. Is there any thought about credit cards?
So currently, they can pay online with credit card.
Okay.
So we have found that has increased our traffic flow considerably as we expanded our ePay option. This is just to provide an additional option for those folks who do carry cash, who may want not to stand in line at the clerk's office to make payment on a traffic fine. Okay. And I think the real exciting thing here is the option for the convenience stores and the ability to go into a convenience store and pay that money. So this particular slide shows you the vendors or the convenience stores, and then the picture on the left is actually what the kiosk will look like. These are currently used, I think, in the probation and parole offices throughout the state.
Senator Carroll?
Talk a little bit about the security of these machines. How often are they emptied? Potential for burglaries and snatching the machines. Can they be tracked? That kind of thing.
So we're working with a vendor for this particular project, Keefe, and they are actually the ones who also operate the probation and parole machines. We will follow and closely align our processes and procedures with what works for them. And we share that concern about emptying those machines, but that will all be handled by the vendor.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You have anything to add?
Nope.
Senator Carroll.
Just quickly, along the lines of what Senator Schickel was talking about. So with this access to file your own documents, a person could get online at any time and initiate the proceedings for a divorce. Correct?
Correct.
So is there a waiting period? Because I could see a lot of fights. One of the parties going straight to the computer and filing for the divorce, and the next day, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Is there a way to go back in and what would be the process to withdraw that request?
I would think that it would follow whatever process is currently in place to withdraw that process. This just uses the technology to provide the springboard, if you will, for that process. So whatever process is currently in place would be followed the same way with an online initiation of that action.
Yeah, that can make for some interesting arguments at home.
Well, thank you all, but before we conclude, since we do have Representative.
Thank you, Mr.
Daniel.
Chairman. I came in late, so I missed some of the presentation, but I appreciate what I've seen so far. Are there any fees associated with using the convenience machines to the individual who's, what kind of fees are
Yes.
folks looking at and so forth?
Yes, thank you. Similar to our ePay, which we use a vendor to process those payments, there is a payment fee associated with that. The exact fee structure, I think, is being determined with the vendor as well, but there will be a nominal payment fee associated with that as a convenience fee.
Senator Carroll.
Sorry, questions just keep popping up in my head. So overall, with all the things that you all are doing, what is the overall goal, the ultimate goal in the making the system more efficient? What do you envision once all these things are up and going? How much time, is there any way to really estimate how much time the courts will save with all these things combined? Jails, the cost of transporting, is there any dollar figure attached to all these different initiatives?
I think that's a great question, and I think as we look at defining measurements of success in these projects, that's certainly something that we need to also capture, is how in the end is this truly saving time and money. I think that one of the things that we always think about is service, right? Service to our customers. So the time savings and the ability to do things online rather than inline is always going to be advantageous to the people we serve. And that's one of our primary focuses, but also understanding that we need measurable outcomes to determine what those savings are.
I think they're great ideas, and I'm assuming other states in some areas are much further ahead than we are, so I'm sure there is some basis to look at to make predictions, but this is pretty exciting stuff, and I'm sure the courts and the jails, with all this happening at one time, it's going to be a learning curve, I'm certain, but it should have big savings in time and money, so good efforts.
Thank you, Senator. Before we adjourn, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the August 17th meeting. So moved. Motion second. All in favor? All opposed? The minutes are adopted. I want to thank our panel today. Very interesting and important discussion that we're having. I'm sure those of us who are left on this panel in regular session will probably want an update on the progress. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We appreciate your time as well as the allocation of the money to complete these projects. Thank you.
Thank you. No other business. Motion to adjourn. So moved. We are adjourned. Thank you.